Hello and welcome to the new age of enlightenment. I am your host, Josh the Archon, and tonight we are going to be delving into a really good, or into a subject matter that as of late, truly loved to delve into. But before I do that, I think there might be a smudge on the camera, so I should actually do that. Awesome. Okay, we're good now. Ne- Next, what is it still? No, I think that's the hue of the light rather than the camera being dirty. But anyways, so for tonight, or before I get started for tonight, I just want to thank our Patreon supporters, Linear, Laura Magee, Mikey Famine, and TART for really helping me do and provide content for you, the viewer, and as well as providing um, just a new way of looking at atheism as a whole. Or I'm hoping at least that I can bring that to you, the audience. Now, the next thing is that if you want, please like and subscribe the video if you like it, and that will be of huge help, and I would greatly appreciate it. Now, let's go on to the let's go on to the topic of tonight: the mind and physicalism. So, predominantly right now, we're going to be talking about the philosophy of mind, but we're going to be talking about the dualistic notions and the monistic notions of mind. So, predominantly for dualism, there are two contents within a human being or within a person in a sense. Or actually, isn't really the right word. I would say two substances. That's how I should put it. Two substances that make a person when we look at dualism. The first substance is more of the materialistic substance that make firing of neurons until, or not just, well, the firing of neurons, the firing of dendrites that continue on throughout the nervous system until they get to your your command center, which is the brain itself, and so on and so forth. And then after you have a second substance, which is predominantly the what is quote unquote called consciousness, the mind, the abstractions within the mind itself. These things a dualist it looks at as more mental properties rather than physical properties. Um, and what mental properties mean is that there's some sort of unknown equation to how the brain works consciously, in a sense. So, what does that mean? That means that there's this unknown component to the how could I say it, to the substance. There you go. That's the word I'm looking for. My apologies. To the substance, which is mental. Now, what does that mean? Most dualists will equate that unknown substance to a more spiritual or a more non-physical, I should say, maybe not spiritual, but non-physical appearances, in the sense that these things do not need a physical uh, correlation, or maybe not even correlation, but a physical cause and effect in order to cause these abstractions or to cause these mental states that one has. And which is also called, towards a certain extent, the hard problem of consciousness, right? You have the easy problem of consciousness, which is technically not easy, it's hard itself, which is predominantly how human behavior truly is. And then you have the hard problem of consciousness, where it talks about more of qualia, And what does it mean for somebody to experience, let's just say, the color red, or to experience the taste of an apple, or the smell of hot chocolate or coffee, or something towards that extent? Why is there a subjective experience in a sense? Why is there a qualic experience that is subjective compared to all other um, experiences, which is more physical, for instance? So, all in all, right, this is the hard problem, and there's more to the hard problem of consciousness, obviously, like, I'm kind of just skimming the surface. Also, the other thing about the hard problem of consciousness is predominantly the a scale of consciousness. So, the individual who came up with this was Chalmers, for instance, and Chalmers states that even a thermostat is what is called quasi-conscious, in a sense. It understands the temperature within the room. It has a circuitry that goes through, and then through that happening, the temperature rises or falls within the thermostat, making it quasi-conscious. Obviously, there are certain issues with that, or certain people bring up certain issues with that. But all in all, it's literally up to, well, I shouldn't say up to the beholder, because there's certain aspects of consciousness that when we really look at it, there's much more than just a mechanical on and off type thing, which a thermostat relatively has, right? It goes on and then goes off. And whenever the room gets colder, it goes on in order to warm up the room. And when the room gets colder or at room temperature, it turns itself off because it doesn't need itself to continue heating up the room. But all in all, is this what consciousness, or is this what the basis of consciousness really is on off and then continue onward? Or is there more to consciousness than meets the eye? Um, and then obviously, what does that mean is that on the opposite side of the road, right? Like, if you continue to build up of consciousness, then at some under now, this is not Chalmers' way of looking at things. Chalmers is also a physicalist, though he wishes to throw physicalism in a certain way out with the bathwater, in a sense, once we start getting a little more complicated. But my question is that why can't a qualic experience, right, and a physical experience interact with each other? So, for instance, why can't, let's just say, somebody being stabbed through the hand or shot through the hand, for instance, or maybe let's just say stabbed through the hand and punched on the hand, right? What gives us the varying instances of pain that we feel? Why would, with most individuals, the stab in the hand would be much more painful than the punch to the hand? However, there are certain individuals that would say that it's the opposite way around. The stab in the hand is less painful than being punched on the hand. Now, for me, I think this also goes into the intrinsic way that our body and our neurons are not just the neurons, my apologies, the dendrites firing off these these chemical reactions throughout the nervous system until it gets to the brain, right? I have For me, I take the more physicalist standpoint. So what that means is that either the the interactions between dendrites firing off the chemicals before it reaches to the brain, where it unleashes these neurons which interact with the brain, but not in a specific area, but it's all matters of the brain working in tandem with each other in order to actually understand the world or the environment or the pain that it's feeling at that particular moment. However, what a qualic experience is more like a, how could I say it? Like a I was going to say a reactor, but a reactor isn't the terminology that I'm looking for. It's more towards the extent of a reader in a sense. That's technically not the terminology that I want to use, but I'll just use it now because um, I can't figure out the word at the moment. But let's just say so it reads the the aspect that there is pain or receptor. That's the word that I'm looking for. Okay, receptor. When you get stabbed in the hand or when there's something that's too hot, a qualic experience for me, just like with certain physicalist um, philosophers, is that these are receptors activating in a quote unquote quasi goal orientated fashion, right? So, what does that mean? Goal orientated. What is the goal that the qualic experience is trying to dole out to you, right? The first thing is that I think that the qualic experience is trying to dole out that there's something wrong, right? So let's just say a person is hallucinating a pink rat running away from them, right? The reality of that is the brain trying to understand and not just understand, but to tell the avatar, right? The person which you are, the I, that there's something wrong mentally with its status. So the pink quote unquote, let's just say rat running away or running towards you or whatever the situation is would most probably, now I'm not gonna say isn't the fact, because obviously there can be certain, I don't know, scientific experiments done on rats which might have turned their pigmentation pink, right? And then henceforth, you are actually seeing a pink rat coming towards you, and it's not just a hallucination. But nonetheless, let's just say if this was a hallucinatory state, what is the brain trying to tell the eye, or what is it trying to tell itself? That there's something wrong with its perception. It's kind of like, okay, there's something that's not right. And henceforth, I am relaying that information to myself in order to do a quote unquote factory reset on itself. But sadly, the brain doesn't necessarily have that option. So predominantly, if it's a one, let's just say a one chance, or not one chance, but a one time situation, what's going to happen is that obviously it's not going to be anything of great value, right? And it's just like, oh, okay, this was either a coincidence or this was an experience that I wasn't this was a unique experience. That's the word that I'm looking for. This was a unique experience. And that's predominantly all it would be, is a unique experience. You see a pink rat running away from you or running towards you, and then it disappears, let's just say. Ah, now that qualic experience is telling itself, okay, this is something wrong. However, one thing that I would state is that when it comes to pain and when it comes to observation of color, for instance, or why a particular thing tastes a particular way, is for its goal orientation of keeping itself alive, right? So a qualic experience is based on keeping itself alive. So if something tastes bitter, what's the best way of doing it? Continue to eat the bitter substance? No, that is not the way to continue to survive and thrive. The best way for you to interact with that bitter substance is to dispose of it immediately and get it out of your mouth before you actually consume or swallow it and something bad happens to you, right? Henceforth, that's why I would state that a qualic experience is predominantly made, or not predominantly made, my apologies, predominantly a goal orientated system that reacts to certain stimuli that it feels in a sense, or that it tastes, or that it reacts to in a particular way in order to keep the, I was going to say the host, in order to keep it alive. Now, what the other situation that I would say is that, well, what's the, because everything is sort of subjective, or the is ought problem, right? With something that isn't necessarily an ought, and something that's ought to be a particular way isn't the way that it is in philosophical terminology. And don't get me wrong, there's more to it than that. And I'm as I stated, this is just an intro to the philosophy of mind. I'm going to actually delve into it much more in for future videos, and also give much more explanations behind why I'm a physicalist rather than a dualist or any other prospect that is out there at the moment, and why I think physicalism is the proper way, in my opinion, in looking at how the brain and how the mind actually works. So now we've talked about qualia for a bit, but I'm going to talk about it just a bit more to give a couple more ideas, just based on the qualic experience in and of itself. And from there, we can really just run into the next scenario, which is abstractions, because predominantly abstractions happen within the mind itself. So, are abstractions based on physical processes, or are they based on a non-physical processes, which is predominantly um, what is called quote unquote mental or quote unquote non-physical? But predominantly right now we'll focus on the the qualic experience that an individual feels. So when we're looking at qualia, and qualia being a goal orientated um, or a quasi goal oriented mechanism, what we're the issue is that all things, so all of your five senses work together in order to give one's qualic experiences, in order to either help you get away from something, to help you run for safety. And that's why, for instance, why I think humans and certain mammals might see red, for instance, is because it's a realization that the animal is injured, right? And henceforth, if I am bleeding, I need to get out of the actual area, right, as quickly as possible before something happens, before I drop dead or whatever the situation may be, or before I get hit with another arrow, before I get hit with, or before I get stabbed again, before all these other issues that run through a being's mind when it is predominantly injured, right? So I think that's why red is something that's so drawing to a human. And even though that there can be different spectrums of how we see red, red is still going to be relatively, no matter how we all look at it, the majority of individuals, unless you're colorblind or unless you're blind, or unless there might be, let's just say, a greater variation within the color red for a particular individual that might make them think that it's orange, let's just say, or purple or some kind of violet. But nonetheless, the reality of the situation is that all people will see the color that they will state is red. No matter what the circumstance is, they'll look at it and be like, what is this color? And I would say 95%, and this is just me being conservative, 95% of the population would say this is red. No matter what variation of red it is, it doesn't matter. It's red to the normal person. And I think that's one of the reasons why our spectrum, or the way that we see the lights, how light radiates off things and comes into your corneas and literally goes into what is called a fovea. afterwards, which is where all the images really get reduced and processed and kind of how could it gets organized in a particular way before it goes into the brain itself, and then it kind of just gives us the observation of which we are seeing, right? So that's why I think the qualic experience cannot be a qualic experience if one lacks sight, let's just say, right? Like what is read for somebody who was born blind you'll never have that qualic experience. Yeah, actually, I shouldn't say that because now we have technology that actually can help individuals who are blind see. But still, what ends up happening, right, for people who are born blind is that the information is kind of like an information overload. So no matter how much, just like with, I believe, the thought experiment is Mary is within a room. She's a scientist, but the only colors that she knows is I think it's white and black or something like that, or just white, or so some color to that extent. And what's the thing is that she is learning, well, basically based on reading, not by seeing, but by reading, that red is, or like what red is or what color is in general. Now she understands, or she has read all about color and understands wavelengths and everything like that and how a particular color comes to be. But so does that mean that she knows all color? Now this is a question that really needs to be asked. Excuse me. Is it that she herself knows all the colors when we look at it in the sense of um, the practical? Absolutely. No, not practical. My but theoretical. Does she know colors theoretically? Yes. And one can know color based on the information or based on reading. They can understand the theoretical workings of how particular things come to be. And that's perfectly fine. But does that mean that she knows the practical? Absolutely not, because there's actually a difference between theory and practice. You can read all about driving a car. That's perfectly fine. Now, the instances is that when you're inside the driver's seat, it's completely freaking different compared to you actually reading about how to drive and about the actual signs and signals and adjusting the rear view mirror, adjusting the side mirrors, adjusting your wheel so that you can actually drive properly, adjusting your seat. Uh, the 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 practical necessity for driving is such, or not necessity, but the practical means for driving is such an experience in and of itself that reading is doesn't necessarily matter at all. You can actually not learn, like, you can learn the theory, but you can be horrible at the practical. The practical in and of itself just drops completely from the individual, and the individual can fail driving multiple times. So that's the thing when people are talking about, and definitely the Mary example of what color is and so on and so forth. The reality of the situation is that yes, she theoretically understands what color is and what red is and all the rest of that, right? And what it is to, or maybe not what it is to be red, because that's the practical reasons, but the theory of being red itself, right? Now the reality is different. When she leaves that room finally, and she finally experiences the color red, that's when she will now have the practical knowledge of actually understanding what red is and what it is to be red, right? So you can understand the theory, but the what it is aspect is separated from the theory because it's based on the experience of actually observing the wavelengths when they hit a particular object that then radiate the color that we perceive through our corneas, for instance. That is where we get the qualic, what it's like to be a particular thing, right? Now that is where I see qualia being again a goal orientated um, system, because for you to see a particular thing and the color of a particular thing, again, it's based on the survival of the organism. If we weren't able to see or perceive a particular thing, or our surroundings were, how could I say it? We're blocking something or a predator from us, the likelihood that we would be taken out would be so much greater. But because we were able to perceive certain things that we then got, that helped us back away from a particular danger, right? Helped us thrive. And just like with all other animals, and definitely all other, um, I was going to say, well, yeah, all other hominid species, even though we're the only hominid species left, but all other prior hominid species, and let alone all great apes, have that same exact thing too. When there's rustling in the trees, it's time to go. That's predominantly it. If there's rustling in the trees, there's no reason to be looking for what's making that sound. It's time to bounce, you know? And likewise with fire, for instance, fire had helped us out big time with actually perceiving our environment in the dark and everything so that we can see the predator before it's like right there in our face. So that's predominantly what I see qualia as being. Qualia being a goal orientated system that helps the survival of a particular species or of all species when encountering certain environments, in order for those species to understand it's time to get out of that specific area. It's time to leave, it's time to go, pack your stuff, let's bounce. So that's predominantly what I think a qualic experience is, and that's why there's so many people who are averse to coffee, because I think too that coffee in and of itself has such a bitter taste, but at the same exact time, we do know that there are certain that it causes certain complications for human beings down the road if you have too much of it or whatever the situation may be, right? So I think that again, that is the goal orientated response of qualia in order to kind of like stave off somebody from something that is. So that's all in all. That's all in all what I think the what a qualic experience truly is. But anyways, now let's go into abstractions. What is an abstraction when we're talking about mental things? Well, for me, and also looking at the physicalist philosophers, I see that a abstraction is predominantly based on experience. And what that experience does is that it recalls everything necessarily that you've been, all experiences that you've had beforehand, and they kind of construes a bit of a story, or what we can say as a quote unquote what your future can perceive, in a sense, or what you can perceive for your own future, in a sense. So what you would like to be, how you would like to build your life up, in a sense. But all these things are also based on your physical observations and seeing other individuals achieving great things, and for you equating that you can also do great things. I think that's the reality of what abstraction is. Abstraction is only just a remembrance of certain things and experiences that you've had in your past. And what that does is that it actually brings you within the realm of reality, in a sense. It kind of trying to give you an aspect of what is true, in a sense, or what is realistic, like what is a realistic goal and what is a thank you very much. I greatly appreciate it, Dustin. Thank you. And so, but then again, right? An abstraction also is not just an experience, it's also your own interactions, right? Because if you didn't have eyes to perceive, then the only thing that you can most possibly probably do, unless you are brought to another place, right? Such as, let's just say, I know a friend who knows how to surf, but he's also blind. That's crazy to hear, but the thing is that surfing is the same as I think as if you are blind. It's harder, but it's the same thing. It's based on the distribution of your body weight, and if you're able to distribute your body weight in a proper way, what can happen? Well, you will be able to surf the waves even though you do not have the perception to see. Now, don't get me wrong. Can that be dangerous? Of course. But that doesn't mean that it's impossible, but it's still within the realm of possibilities, right? So that's why when we're really looking at what abstraction is this experience, and abstraction is actually just action in a sense. The actions that you have done, your brain kind of puts something forward and say, well, this is something that you can also do through the abstraction or through the experiences and through the actions that you've done beforehand. And that's literally, at least what the way that I see things, that's literally what abstraction is. Abstraction is literally taking things that are within the real and giving them a straight line to itself and saying, you know what? That person did that. You can do that. Oh, that person did A, B, and C. Well, hell, you can do A, B, C, and then add a D, right? So these experiences, and also welcome, Dustin. Thank you very much for watching. Um, the reality, right, of an abstraction isn't anything else but the experience of an organism that it has perceived beforehand. It can be on TV, it can be based on individuals that came up with great mathematical equations in the past and they built up on those individuals' progress and everything like that. Because that's the one thing that I do agree with Stephen Hawking's when he stated we build on the shoulders of giants because nobody starts from scratch. We all build up on equations that have been there before, and then we find newer equations that that individual might not have figured out, might not had the technology in order to find out at that time. And only through our technological advancement and our modernization that we were able to build on the abstractions of the individuals prior to us and build upon it in such a way that we find new ways and modes of being and modes of the universe and so on and so forth. And so that's why, for me, I really do believe that abstractions are literally just actions and experiences. And an experience is based on what you have observed so far. And if that observation is you are able to equate that observation to your own standard, then you will be able to reach those heights. If it is an unrealistic goal or an unrealistic abstraction, you will slowly but surely realize that those heights cannot be reached as of yet, or maybe never. You never know, right? It's based on the probability or improbability of a particular abstraction that an individual has. but that's predominantly it. And that's why I look at things through a physicalist lens, because I say, what is the point of having something that's non-physical? And secondly, not just what is the point, how do we get the non-physical? Because if we, or if there's individuals that believe, well, not believe, but see the overwhelming evidence for evolution, and then state there's some sort of non-physical processes, I ask, where does that non-physical processes come from if we're talking about an evolutionary state of mind? Right? But then that's the one thing that it always goes back to is the God belief. Well, there is a non physical entity that is separate from space and time that was able to create the universe, create minds, and through creating these minds, created the world in a sense, and gave these particular minds to beings that were fallible. And this is how we get our experiences, and this is how mental experiences come about, is through non-physical processes that cannot be how could I say it, that cannot be engaged, right, in the physical world, or it cannot be affected, sorry, not engaged. It cannot be affected within the physical world. But then after I ask people, well, if a qualic experience, right, or if a particular experience cannot be quote unquote, um, how could I say it, affected by the physical. If mental experiences can't be affected by physical experiences, then why do individuals at certain points lose certain qualic experiences? Right? So, what I mean by that is, let's just say for me, I go and I hit my head extremely hard. Let's just say while coming out of a metro, I just swang my head extremely hard. Now the question is, right? What is the ramifications of repercussions of this particular hit to the head? Well, predominantly, it might lead to concussions. It might lead to a bit of dizziness and then it goes away. It might lead to a plethora of things. But there are certain individuals that when they get sick or something towards that extent, like get some sort of illness, that they actually lose a certain qualic experience, even though this is a rare occasion, obviously. But still, they lose that qualic experience. There's an individual that I've read up on that has to actually think about how to walk and where to place their legs when they walk. That is insane, because most people, we don't think about where to put our feet when we walk. It's an automatic type of response or whatever, and it's based on our qualic experiences, and let alone us failing and actually succeeding within our younger years of walking, and makes it more automatic than it is kind of like manual, right? But the problem is that when we have a qualic experience which dissipates from illness, sickness, let's just say damage to the brain itself, what ends up happening is that a particular what something is dissipates. And that's the thing that I wish to ask individuals who are dualists. How could somebody who had the experiences, right, lose said experiences through damaging their brains? It doesn't make sense if the mental experiences are completely different from physical experiences, and that physical experiences cannot affect mental experiences. So that's why the more and more I read about neurology, biology, when I read about consciousness, when I read about philosophy, the more I start to realize that there's something amiss with the dualistic proposition. That these supposed non physical, not subjects, but substances seem to be greatly affected by physical happenings. They seem to be greatly affected by physical damages. And for me, I'm wondering, how is that if it's a non physical, uh, not subject, I keep saying subject, a non physical substance? And then finally, the last thing that I think of is that all in all, we predominantly use our senses in order to perceive the world. And through our perception, a qualic experience is it occurs. But without those not sensations, but without those ways of percepting the world around us, the qualic experience does not exist. And henceforth, for there being a red, you must perceive a red. If you cannot perceive a red, there is no way that you can say what it means to be red, because literally you'll say, what the hell do you mean what it means to be red? I don't even know what it means to be green, yellow. I don't even know what it means to be a color because I can't perceive color. And right there, we run into massive amounts of problems when we talk about philosophy of dualism. At least within my opinion. And I would love to have a conversation with a philosopher on dualism in order to really pick their minds based on these particular questions. Sorry about that. But again, the other question that I have based on the dualistic prospects is that when we are looking for a non physical existence, can there be a non physical prospect to mental things? That's where I get a bit confused, because what do you mean by non physical? Right? Because if we really look at the definitions of physical, we can understand that, okay, well, I see what you mean, that mental things seem not to be physical. But then we talk about dispositions of things. So, for instance, I'll tell you what I mean by disposition. When we look at physical, a lot of people talk about us, tables, walls, desks, chairs, anything like that. The plethora of objects that you can perceive, touch, and that they feel hard or soft or whatever, but they're just objects that you can hold in your hand. A lot of individuals call that physical, right? And then they talk about particles and they talk about quantum events and so on and so forth, and say that that's physical as well. But the one thing that I would like to ask those individuals is that what makes, let's just say, particles and what makes like hard substances that we can hold within our hands different? And that's where we start seeing that it's based on the disposition of a particular molecule that leads to a physical process being completely different from other physical processes, right? So, for instance, when we're talking about certain particles can actually go through our skin and stuff like that, and through our skin, through our bodies and everything, and interact with us in negative ways, or interact with us, such as like, let's just say X-rays or gamma rays, for instance, which do a lot of damage when it comes to our bodies. But at the same exact time, it goes through us, but we don't feel it. There's not like, "Oh my god, I got hit by a particle. Oh my god, I got hit by another particle." No. We barely feel it throughout our we barely feel it. We don't feel it throughout our daily lives. Why is that if that is a physical process and we are physical beings? It's simple, because the disposition, the way that the physical particle interacts with other physical particles is completely different. And henceforth, it doesn't feel like you're being shot a million times by particles. No, instead you're walking and you're barely you don't even feel anything happening to your body. Why is that? Because the disposition of that particular substance is different. It's the same because they're both physical, but they're different within the way that they interact within the world itself. And henceforth, we can say that the disposition of what is physical can be different. Is still physical. It still interacts with the world in a particular way, or with the material world or the physical world in a material way that does bring causes and effects. But the reality is that when it actually interacts with us as a whole, it doesn't do anything of the sort. You don't feel like, as I stated, you're being shot by particles or anything towards that extent. So that is where I ask individuals that believe in the non-physical, show me something that is non-physical within the material world. And they would like to say mental things, but mental things are physical things. Because if a physical thing is able to disrupt, or physical ailments are able to disrupt mental or physical ailments are able to disrupt mental states, then obviously it's not even a sense of correlation anymore. This is bloody causation. And when it's causation, then we can really look at the circumstance and be say, can are mental states physical states? And I would state uh, uh, with a high probability, sorry, that mental states are physical states. There's just a disposition is different, but they are still affected by both states of mental is also affected by the physical. And when we talk about no, sorry, the physical, no, damn it, the mental is affected by the physical, absolutely. But when we state that the physical is manipulated by the mental, sorry, when we say that the physical is manipulated by the mental, what we mean is by us ourselves are manipulated by abstractions, which are based on experiences and actions of prior individuals, that we were able to work in a particular way, that we are able to change the environment in a sense towards our betterment or towards our detriment, either or. But that's still something that is greatly beneficial in a sense, is that when we look at mental things affecting physical things, what we're stating is the subjective experiences that an individual has felt has led individuals towards a path, right, that can change certain prospects within the world for good or better. Not for good or better, what the hell? For better or for worse. That's what I wanted to say. And from that experience, that's where we can really start seeing that the mental does have an effect on the physical, but all in all, the physical always has an effect on the mental, because that's where even our own ideas and our own abstractions lie. It's not our own ideas, it's ideas that other individuals have come up with, and we wish to take the mantle of those particular ideas. But it's only based on because those individuals were living, breathing creatures that also had ideas that they worked on, and not just worked on, but actually went out in the world and tried to bestow onto other people through actions. And henceforth, with abstractions, they are mental, physical things. Oh, sorry. My apologies. My God, my brain is starting to shut down on me right now. Like how I stated with abstractions, they are experiential and um, uh, yeah, well, yeah, they're experiential experiences. But all in all, I think that At least with the introduction of a physicalist perspective, I think that we've kind of hit the subject matter on the head. That doesn't necessarily mean that we went through all the subject matter of what physicalism truly is and how we can really justify, because that's what I really want to do, is justify that physicalism is the proper way and it the most justified, or physicalism can at least be justified by atheists, and let alone by theists. There's also physicalist theists that are out there as well, which kind of boggle my mind. I'm like, really? How do you come to your physicalism where you believe in a deity that is out of the existence of time and space, but yet it is still a physical substance? Or maybe it's just that it created physical substances and yet it's able to interact with physical via mental substances. I don't know. But all in all, I will be going deeper into the the equation. And with the equation, deep to uh, the physicalist or mind and physicalism even more. So at this very moment, because I'm stating that I'm kind of just stating the same thing at this moment. So uh, I just want to thank everybody who's come and watched so far. I greatly appreciate that you've come and watched this show tonight. Thank you very much. If you want to, please like and subscribe, because that'll definitely help us get to more individuals, and it just helps us out greatly. So that would be much appreciated. And if you wish to actually support the New Age of Enlightenment, because that actually helps us promote science, philosophy, modernization technologies, and also atheism. So, if you really want to help out a channel that wishes to provide and support these type of uh, this type of content, then please check out the New Age of Enlightenment Patreon page, which is at the bottom in the description below. So if you go in the description below, go all the way to the bottom, you will see a link to the Patreon. And if you wish to actually support, that would be greatly appreciated. If you just want to look and browse around, that's perfectly fine too. And all in all, I think that I am finished with what I need to state. So have a great night, everybody. Hope you like the show. And next week, what we're going to bring to you is a continuation of the brain. And we're going to continue actually justifying or trying, or not trying, but showing the justification of the brain states and how they actually benefit the atheistic position rather than the theistic position. So come on by and check that out. And also, so that will be on Saturday at 10 p.m. And on Sunday at 10 p.m., we're going to, that is, yes. And on Sunday at 10 p.m., we're actually going to go deeper into the philosophy of mind. So I really hope that everybody liked the show, and I really do. I don't even know what I was about to say there, but anyways, have a great night and see you next weekend. One second.